Welcome everyone. In a few moments, we will start the presentation. While you are settling in, say hi in the chat box. We would love to hear where everyone is joining us from. As WheatonArts celebrates its 50th anniversary this year, we want to welcome you to our first ever virtual Eco Week. I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that this week-long program is in partnership with the Cumberland County Improvement Authority. This virtual event features visits with local artists with live and pre-recorded programming from environmentally minded organizations and a daily kids eco camp each morning. Please join us later today at 6 p.m. for the Sutton Garden in Summer, a narrated video tour followed by a live Q&A presented by CU Maurice River. There's still time to register. Please check the chat for the link. And today we are joined by Pam Weichmann for the second part of Newspaper Baskets, but more on that in a few moments. Before we get started, we want to make sure that you have a comfortable viewing experience. To that end, it is my pleasure to introduce Marcy Peterson, who will be handling all of our technical needs throughout the program. Marcy has been with WheatonArts since 1994. She is the IT director, and her undergraduate and graduate studies were in fine art, e-business, marketing, and public relations. Marcy, could you provide us with some tech tips for this webinar?
Sure, happy to, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. This presentation is a Zoom webinar, and you can ask the host questions through the Q&A window. As an attendee, you can also like other attendees' questions. As well, I'll be monitoring the chat box today, and if you would like, as Sarah said, you can let us know where you're from in the chat box. Try it out. Follow along for links for additional resources in the chat box, and you can text between attendees. So say hi to a friend or make a new friend. Should you lose a connection for any reason, please close all the windows. Then you can click your original email and hop back in. There's no problem. This session is being recorded, but as I said, only the host and the panelists will be heard and recorded. To customize your experience, you can access settings in the upper left of your screen, but I think for this particular webinar, you'll be fine without that. But just so you know, if you'd like to go back, you can. The next slide just touches on how you can support WheatonArts, and you can do that through memberships, donations, and shopping at WheatonArts. Also, you can contact Rhodey Barron, Director of Development at rbarron@wheatonarts.org. So I'll touch on those support items just briefly, and on the next slide, you'll see the list of things that you get as a benefit, and members get it all. And as a member, you may want someone to come to WheatonArts with or to talk about WheatonArts with, and what a great gift for your friend. Gift memberships are always available. And finally, shopping at WheatonArts is a great way and a fun way to support WheatonArts. And for the rest of the month of August, on the next slide, you'll see listed a couple benefits. One is that you get 15% off the pottery that you may have seen on Sunday night being demonstrated, the cultivation of that clay being demonstrated. Not only that, our whole shopping cart is 15% off for the month, for the rest of the month of August. Also, our partners, CCIA, that Sarah mentioned, will get or offering a complimentary free eco bag with every purchase, whether you get it picked up or whether you pick it up curbside or whether you have your purchase shipped, you'll get that free eco bag. And next, I just want to introduce Sarah Lacey. Sarah's the Special Events Coordinator at WheatonArts. She recently began this role in February 2020, so she's a new face around campus. Sarah has worked as an event coordinator and sales manager previously at Willow Creek Winery in Cape May and for the Noyes Museum of Art in Oceanville, New Jersey. She's excited to combine her love of art with her background in event planning in WheatonArts. She received her Bachelor in Fine Arts with a concentration on printmaking from Stockton University. So over to you now, Sarah.
Thank you for your introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this program, during which we'll hear from Pam Weichmann. Pamela Weichmann is a ceramic artist, arts administrator, and educator. She has taught for Rowan University and WheatonArts. You may have met her running the family activities on site at WheatonArts. She received her Bachelor of Fine Art at Rowan University and her Master's of Science at Drexel University. Her favorite thing about teaching and creating art is the challenge it presents to find new approaches in understanding and interpreting the world around us. Welcome, Pam.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everybody for joining us here today. I'm going to go over a few things when it comes to finishing your newspaper baskets. But before we get into that, I want to quickly mention that at the end of these 3 slides that I have showing you about how to finish and seal the baskets, I'd love if you feel comfortable, if you've worked on a basket, to go live with us and join us and show us your basket. And to do that, what you would have to do is to go into your chat feature and say, I would like to share. And when you do that, then we'll know that it's okay for us to invite you to join us here to present. Because if you have specific questions about your basket that you've been working on and you're stumped, you can do that, or you can just share your basket. I'm going to share mine at the end, and I'm going to show you how I use my basket. I found a really kind of perfect use for it. It's the perfect size, and it was completely unintentional. So please, as I'm going through these, if you'd like to share, please say I would like to share, and then we'll have a nice little conversation at the end together. So the first thing I'm going to cover here is painting the inside of the basket. And to do this, I'm using just a little bit of paint, and I'm mixing my paint to create a unique color. I didn't want to just use an out of the tube color. So I'm trying to achieve a purple color. I have a lot of purple in my home, so I thought the basket would just make sense. It would go with my decor if I made it a little purple. So as you can see here, I'm just looking at it, and I'm looking at the colors there inside the actual basket. There's a little bit of blues and some purples, and I was trying to kind of match that because I knew I wanted to paint part of the basket and leave the other part just showing the natural newspaper, because I really like that texture and those colors and the grays and the print of the newspaper. I thought that was unique. So here I'm starting to paint the inside of my basket. And as you can see, I'm going to cover the entire inside with that paint. Now you don't have to do that. I did a Google search yesterday actually, and I was just curious to see how others approach this idea of painting while also leaving some bare newspaper. And I've seen people do strips of paint, so that way you only have part of the newspaper showing, and then you have another layer of paint. So you could do strips of paint on the inside or the outside, which looks kind of striking. Other things that you might think of doing are painting, like if you want a floral design, you could do painting of flowers on the outside, just petals, nothing too elaborate, but then you would have painted flowers and then the newspaper behind it. So that could be something cool. So I'm really encouraging everybody, when you're thinking of finishing your newspaper basket, to really experiment. For this video, I did something that was just simple and basic because I wanted to show everybody.
Yeah, I do. Now, what type of paint are you using?
Sure. So this paint here is acrylic paint, and I would really suggest at least using a paint that has some opacity to it. So that means that when you paint it on, it doesn't look, you can't see through it. A lot of tempera paint, which a lot of schools use, it is extremely washable, tempera paint. But if you've ever used it, you know it's kind of watery. So you really need multiple layers to achieve that coverage. And since we're using newspaper, now this newspaper basket is just the rolled newspaper tubes. I haven't done anything else before painting it. So this is paint right on rolled newspaper. And if you watch my previous video, you know that when I was speaking about gluing the newspaper tubes together, you wanted to make sure that you didn't use too much glue because the newspaper would get wet and soft, and then it would kind of pull apart and almost disintegrate.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm using this acrylic paint, I don't have to use a lot of paint to get the coverage. And if you notice here, I do one coat of paint, and I think actually for this newspaper basket, I only did one coat. But if you find that you want to do multiple coats, it's really important that you wait for each coat to dry before adding another. Same goes for painting inside and outside. I wouldn't paint the outside and then immediately do some painting on or I wouldn't paint the inside and then immediately paint the outside, because I wouldn't want both walls of that newspaper to be moist. I want one to completely dry before moving on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this stage, even though the weave keeps it tight and strong, it's really that sealing at the end that protects it from kind of the humidity that exists naturally in the air. And if I have people joining today from New Jersey, you know that our summers get very, very humid. So I would suggest sealing this. Now, Sarah, I'm kind of going to put you on the spot here. Didn't you mention that you made a newspaper basket at one point and it kind of swelled with the heat? Is that what happened?
I did something where we were rolling newspaper straws for a kids' art camp.
Okay.
And we were making picture frames, but it all we didn't use skewers to help roll, so we had to do it all like that. So for the most part, there is a lot of variation in width for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I had mine sitting out for, I would say, at least a week in the early summer before I painted it, and I didn't see any change. I actually kind of waited purposely because I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't seal it right away. You know, would it come apart? Would the humidity affect it? Now, of course, I have air conditioning in my house. I didn't put it outside or anything because I actually wanted to keep doing these videos. I didn't want to have to make a whole new paper basket. But the house still gets humid, and nothing happened. It didn't swell. So for this technique, it seemed like it would be somewhat okay if you didn't seal it and it was just going to sit in an air-conditioned home. However, I do strongly encourage, just because when you touch newspaper, your hands get a little black, and you'll notice that if you're rolling these newspaper tubes, and even now when you're touching it, your fingertips are going to get a little black. But anyway, one coat at a time. It's really important, especially with the paint. Now, there's another paint that people have asked if I would use, and it's oil paint. Now, as an artist, of course, I have a ton of different mediums in my house, and oil paint's one of them. The only reason I wouldn't suggest oil paint is just for the convenience. It's not very convenient because to clean it, you have to use turpentine. Otherwise, your brush is going to get, you're going to have to throw your brush out. So it can't be cleaned up with water because it's oil-based paint. So I wouldn't suggest using oil paint. Also, the fumes of it, if you're doing this with kids, the fumes of oil paint are pretty intense.
Takes so long to dry too.
Right.
I feel like it may make it
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've had family and friends who have seen me doing these, and they have, of course, a gazillion questions, and they think I'm using really fancy materials to make these projects. And really, I'm not. The whole purpose of this is to use things that you might already have at home. Even these paints that I had, they were just, as you can see, that blue, it's kind of dirty. I've had that sitting around for, I can't even tell you how long. I know I keep playing this, but I have so much to say about it. The brushes I'm using, you can see over there on the left, the brushes I'm using are extremely basic brushes. Again, I just grabbed brushes that I had sitting around the house. And this is a palette knife I'm using to mix it, but you don't have to use a palette knife. You could use a plastic spoon, a plastic knife, anything. I just grabbed stuff that I had in my studio. The brushes themselves, one was from Home Depot, and you'll see me use that later. And the other ones were just regular Michael's paintbrushes that I had. So nothing fancy here. Really don't worry about purchasing new supplies if you already have paintbrushes at home.
They don't look like long bristles either, so I guess you're not at risk of it poking through.
Right, exactly. And if you notice, the way I'm painting is I'm kind of keeping the brush at an angle. I'm not going 90 degrees straight down into it, because then otherwise, yeah, it might leak through. And that's what I do keep checking as I'm doing this to make sure that the paint isn't dripping through. And if you were to put big globs of paint, you would risk, as you can see right there, you can see right through all those little holes. Because even though when I was working, and as I told you earlier in the week, I squished the newspaper tubes down to make that weave tight, you're still going to get small little holes in there. And it's really not visible when it's in your house, but here, because I'm lit, I'm on a white background, I'm painting a dark color, you really see it. But in daily life, you're not going to see those little holes. But the paint will, and the paint will drip through. So make sure when you're applying your paint, it's not in big glops. It's nice thin layers. I would rather have you do more layers and have them be thin than try to glop it on all at once. Because if your newspaper basket is slightly weak, you might risk that paint making the basket come apart, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that this is actually strengthening your basket instead of weakening it. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about sealing the outside. Now, to seal the outside, I'm using Mod Podge, and the Mod Podge that I'm using is the gloss version. They have matte versions, but so if you don't want it gloss, if you just kind of want a matte finish, you can get that as well. I just like gloss because if ever I had to use a damp cloth, or very, very damp, not like anything dripping, but if I wanted to wipe it off to get dust off of it, a gloss would clean really nicely. So again, I am using here just a random brush that I had in my house, and I would have liked to use a wider brush. If you noticed in that previous video, I had a brush that I think was about 3 to 4 inches. That would have been great, but to use that, I would have had to pour my Mod Podge into another container. And I just didn't want to waste another container. This is Eco Week, so let's think about not using extra paper bowls or plates if we don't have to. We're trying to reduce our consumption here and our use. So I just decided to use a smaller brush and to apply it in smaller strokes. Again, here I am making sure to not glop it on too much. And the newspaper, as you can imagine, absorbs a little bit. So definitely when you're applying it, you will think you need to add more. I do caution you against that. It's much better if you just do thin layers and multiple layers. And I did that. I probably did about 3 coats of Mod Podge on mine, but I'm not going to show you all that here because this is basically it, just going and painting. I will note though that I made sure that the inside had dried first. Again, you don't want 2 walls to be weak and wet at the same time.
Now, are you sealing it as a reinforcer to the structure, or is this an aesthetic choice so it has like a glossy finish?
It's a little bit of both. I felt that when I'm going to even touch mine right now just to get a sense of it as I talk to you. I felt that after I sealed it, it did become a little stronger. The newspaper, when I touch it now with my fingertip, and I don't know if everyone can see me on their screen, but when I touch this, it doesn't really, like when I push it with my fingertip and my nail, it bends a little bit, but not as much as it would if it was just straight newspaper. So I feel like it does both. It's an aesthetic choice. It's a functional choice as far as strength goes. And also when we're talking about like the fact that you might need to just wipe this thing off if it gets dusty. If you're like me, you're going to want to just clean it, just give it a little dust. I find that it's much easier, unless of course, if you really don't want to seal it and you want to clean it, you could always use like a little feather duster. But because it has all those grooves, it will collect dust eventually. So for practical uses, that's another reason that I seal it. Now, I've mentioned a few times that you should let this dry before applying the next layer. And a question that may come to people's minds, just for time management purposes, is how long in between each layer should you wait, and how long is that going to take to dry before you can apply the next layer? I would say a minimum amount of waiting time would be 20 to 30 minutes. I just because life is busy, I think I may have even waited like an entire day, but that's not necessary. I would say probably by 2 hours, you should be completely dry and not have any like tack. So if you get to a point where it's still like just tacky, that's probably okay. You know, I would move ahead. It's painting when it's gloppy and wet and the newspaper obviously feels wet. I wouldn't further soak it again, because if there's any weakness in the structure of your weave, I really don't want you to kind of ruin it in the final stages. I want you to use this as an opportunity to make it stronger. So, and waiting that long will do that.
Does the same thing go between painting the inside and then the Mod Podge, 30 minutes?
Yes. Do you mean applying the Mod Podge on top of the paint, or do you mean
From
for the
going
paint?
from the painting of the inside and then going and sealing the outside.
Oh, right. So yeah, so the steps between these last two videos. Yes, I would say at least 30 minutes for that, to wait for that paint to dry. If not for structure, then just for your own personal comfort and cleanliness of your hands. Because if you try to paint this, if you try to seal the outside after you've just painted, and you do have to touch the inside as you're doing that. So if that paint's wet, yeah, it's just going to get all over your hands, and you might just become a little frustrated.
Good to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's like kind of you know, practical reasons too, because who wants to just constantly clean their hands as they're doing this? Because like it's messy. What was I gonna say? I lost the train of thought there. Oh, but if you wait, I would say an hour with the paint, you should be fine. 30 minutes, and then I would say by an hour, something like acrylic paint is totally going to be fine. Another reason that you want to wait is if there is a little bit of paint that has come through your wall. So say that when you were painting, you accidentally applied a little too much and it dripped through. If you go and apply the Mod Podge directly after on the outside and some has seeped through, you risk spreading that wet paint all on your outside. Now, if you want to paint your outside, that's, you know, that kind of mistake wouldn't be a problem. But if you want your outside to be pure newspaper and you don't want any paint, you do risk kind of pulling that paint from the inside and spreading it on the outside with your brush with the Mod Podge. So just a caution there. Another thing that you see me doing at the end of this clip is sealing the bottom. And again, you want to make sure, if you notice here, that when I'm sealing the side, I'm stopping. See, I just got to myself and I was like, oh. So if you're sealing the outside and you need this kind of rim to hold on to, don't seal the rim yet. Wait until the very end to seal the rim. So I'm sealing the sides of the basket, then I flip it over on the table so that way I can seal the bottom, and the rim at this point is still not sealed. Mod Podge, if anybody has used it, you'll know that it's kind of sticky, and it's also used as a glue. So if anybody has like done decoupage, where you take pieces of paper and you adhere it to a surface and you cover it with Mod Podge, that is like gluing it to the surface. So if you would have sealed the rim of that basket and then flipped it over, it would be like sticky to the surface of your table. So you really want to seal the rim at the very last step. And I think I do that. I can't remember if I did it here, but I think I do that as I'm painting the inside of the basket, or as I'm sealing the inside of the basket.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move on to our next slide here. And this is the final sealing of the inside. So now, to do this, I would really suggest waiting until the next day. So really give your paint like a day to dry overnight before you start putting the Mod Podge on. Because again, you risk just kind of smearing that paint all over the place. And if that paint is kind of bone dry, then you know when you apply your Mod Podge, you're really then sealing another layer right on top of the paint, as opposed to just mixing the paint and the Mod Podge together in a big kind of sticky mess. Which could, if you're really concerned about the nice gloss finish, it could compromise that gloss finish if it gets mixed in with the acrylic paint. And see, so now my outside is nice and dry with the Mod Podge on it, so I can kind of hold it and move it around. And I don't know if you notice here, I mean, I remember just from the tactile sensation of it, when I was, see how it like falls out of my hand there and slips? That's because of that Mod Podge and that glossy, slippery outside finish that it now has. And it's like gripping a basketball and it just wants to come out of my hand. It was crazy. So that's when you know that, wow, this thing is really starting to get stronger, when you can't even hold it because it's so strong and it's like slipping out. So that's, you know, that's kind of what you should be expecting. And I would put, you know, I don't think you need more than 2 layers of Mod Podge on your basket. I think that would be plenty. If you really want to go crazy, you could do 3, but I think 2 would be fine. And so you see here now I'm going over the rim of the basket. And if you watch the video of how the basket was made that we posted on YouTube back on Monday, the weaving of the rim of the basket is really tricky. I mean, I almost think that weaving that last bit, because you have to tuck in the tubes, is much trickier than like any other part of the basket to get it tight. So as you see here, mine's even a little loose on the top, just because I couldn't get it really tight. So when I'm sealing that lip or that rim, I'm actually applying the Mod Podge on the top, and I kind of get my brush underneath the open parts, so that way I can seal all around those tubes. I don't know if you can see here, so I'm just going to pause this, but right in here, like when I go to use my brush, I am actually putting my brush like in there to make sure that Mod Podge gets all around those tubes. Because again, even if there's a little piece that's left, I was concerned about humidity. I was concerned about these tubes coming out, because again, if you look at that video, to weave this in, you're basically taking that long piece that you had, you're cutting it, and then you're tucking it back into your weave. And again, Mod Podge is both a sealant and functions as a glue. So because of that, when I am kind of making sure that these top tubes of the rim are all sealed, I'm also kind of gluing them in place, more so than I did when I was weaving. Now, when I was weaving, I could have used some craft glue. I don't think I did, though. I think I just tucked it in because I knew I was going to seal it, and I knew the Mod Podge would be the binder that would hold it together. Do we have any questions about the final sealing of the inside?
Now, I know that you're taking special care towards certain parts of it, like the top, like you said. Are you using a little bit more Mod Podge in that area? Are you concentrating more of it in that area as well, or just focusing a little bit more to do it carefully?
Right. So I'm definitely using a little bit lighter of a touch on that rim than I would say on the sides, because the sides don't have the loose components that the top does. If I wanted to seal it, if I felt that it needed a little more attention and care, I would definitely do more layers on it rather than applying more Mod Podge at that time. You know what I mean? So don't glop it on heavier. When you're painting, you really want to wait until it dries. So again, multiple layers are better than saying, oh no, this thing's coming apart, let me just throw a bunch of glue on there. That's the wrong approach. Just because we're working with paper, you know, and paper in itself can be really delicate. But if it's sealed properly and you do it in a way where you're careful not to saturate it, then you're going to have a much stronger basket. So it's better to approach it without like a panic. You know, sometimes I know if you get you know, flustered and something's coming apart and it becomes frustrating, you know, you just kind of want to do more to it. And sometimes it's best to just put it down and let it dry and then come back to it when the other components are dry. Don't try to fix something when your basket is covered in Mod Podge and the walls are weaker. It's better just to put it down and look at it the next day.
Gotcha.
Do we know if we have anybody that's interested in showing and sharing?
Let's see.
Not so far.
Oh, bummer. Everyone's shy this morning. That's okay. Well, what I'm going to do, because unless there's any audience questions, that's the end of the final sealing. But I'm going to show everybody. I'm going to show and share mine. So, and I'm going to show you I'm going to show you what I use it for. So I'm going to stop my screen share for a minute, and then hopefully you guys can all now see me. Can everybody see me like larger?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is my basket, as I showed you before. It's about that size, and I was thinking, oh, it's cute and it's purple, and my bathroom is gray, so I was like, oh, well, the outside's gray. That'll look really nice in there, and I have some purple accents in the bathroom. So I thought, oh, that's really cool. I'll use it as a toiletry, a basket to hold, I don't know, like perfumes or body washes that I'm not using at the moment. But then I put it in there, and I was like, whoa. I was like, an extra piece of toilet paper fits perfectly in there. So, I know with the pandemic, toilet paper has been like kind of a hot topic. So I was just, I was amazed. I was like, oh, wow, a roll of toilet paper in a basket that size fits perfectly. So if you have like guests coming over and you're going to have, of course, when the pandemic is over, and you want to put some extra toilet paper in there, but you don't want to just have it in, out in the open. If you make a little basket that's about this size, it fits perfectly. So I thought that was kind of like a little cute, ingenious moment that just fit there perfectly. So again, I would love to see everybody's baskets. I know no one today wants to share necessarily. Oh, do we have anything in the chat, or was that you, Marcy?
Nope.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's Terrell. She says that's cute. Thanks. Thanks, Terrell. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen now so we can go back to our slides. But yeah, so just kind of like if you've made this basket and you're one of those people who I definitely was like, what am I going to do with all these baskets? Because I have a ton. And just put it in some rooms and live with it for a minute, and you might all of a sudden say, oh my goodness, this fits perfectly in there. So definitely live with your basket for a little bit, and you'll definitely find some uses for it. And I do suggest that if you're kind of stumped about how to apply the paint and in what pattern is basically what I'm saying. If you're kind of hitting a roadblock and you don't know what to do with it, I would definitely suggest Googling newspaper baskets, and you're going to see a ton of uses and patterns and styles, and they're all made, most of them, if they look like this with the tubes, they're all made with that structure of the tube being rolled and then the tubes being woven together in the manner that I showed you in that previous video. I've even seen people make small pet beds out of newspaper. So, and again, that is just the absolute same circular weaving, but just in a different pattern. So instead of keeping it in a round circle, they've made theirs out into an oval. And again, that's just how you place your newspaper when you're starting out on that base. But I do suggest you Googling it. And I thought the pet bed was the coolest thing in the world. And maybe if I have time one day, I'll make one, but they were pretty sizable. It was cool, but I was like,
big
holy,
project.
that's a very big project. So I don't know, now's the time, I guess, because a lot of people are home. So now would be the time. So again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to not only ask them in the next minute or so, but also I'm going to move to the next slide where I have my information right here, Pamela Weichmann, and my email is pweichmann@wheatonarts.org. I'm always checking my email, and I am always happy to answer questions from people who are working on some of our projects. If you've enjoyed the newspaper basket videos, and if you are really interested in using materials that you have at home to create work, I do suggest that you go to our website, WheatonArts.org. In the middle of that website, if you scroll down a little bit, is a link to family art workshops. And since March, we've been doing one new video per week. So it's one new project. It's not even just one new video, but it's one entire project per week. When we hit September, we might start doing it 2 a month instead of weekly, but we'll see how that goes. But still, 2 a month is great, I think, for you to experiment with some materials that you have at your house. So please check those videos out. They're also posted to our YouTube channel, but our website is really the kind of most direct and quickest way for you to find those.
Yep. And this is my contact information in case you'd like to reach out to me about any of our upcoming events or any input. Love to hear from everyone.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. And I hope everybody is really having fun with their newspaper baskets. I know that I definitely surprised myself. I didn't think that they were going to come together that well when I started making my kind of demo piece. I hadn't made this is my first newspaper basket, and well, second, because I did a base, but I was trying it out just to see if we were going to do this video, and it came out so well. I said, oh, this is awesome. People are going to love it. So I do hope you're enjoying it. I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks so much, Pam.
Oh, you're welcome.
Pam and Sarah, right now I am I shared the link to WheatonArts, the link to Shop WheatonArts, so that everyone can check out what's on the site and look at that Ruga clay. You just type in RUGA to filter for the clay that was presented, pottery by the clay that was presented on Sunday night's presentation called Wild Clay Pots from South Jersey, and and they'll also have that chance to get the free eco bag. I also put tonight's final presentation link in, and this is the last night of Eco Week. It's been a wonderful week, but it's kind of sad that it's almost over. But please check that out. The first part was how to spot a butterfly, and tonight is how to create your garden so that the butterflies come to you. It's a really unique opportunity. And thank you all. And again, if you have any ideas for upcoming programs, contact Pam at Weichmann@WheatonArts.org. And everybody have a lovely day. Bye now.
Thanks, Marcy.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.